Happy Friday. Let's get to some punch points and then we're going to get to your questions. Trump as EP of The Apprentice. He's staying at it. Controversy or non-controversy? That's up to you, really. It's about whether or not this matters to you. There's not a lot of law on what the executive can and cannot engage in, and especially with the President of the United States. But I think the only hint I'll give you in your analysis is distinguish between what you have the right to do and what is right to do. You know, it's not just about whether something is legal or illegal, it's whether it is moral, whether it's right, whether it's ethical. And that's what you have to look at with this and then figure out, well, is it really a passive thing? Would it allow people to influence the president by advertising on his show? These are the kinds of considerations. But most political analysts will say the man got elected because of who he is, not despite it, and this is part of who he is. So, the global warming distinction. Separate in your mind the idea of what a denier is. Do you deny what the predictions are, when things will get worse, when New York City will be underwater, and question those models? Or are we talking about denying the fact that human beings have an impact on the warming of our planet? Those are two very different things, because the predictions, like most predictions, are set up to be wrong. But the science that global warming is real and not just a blip in a cycle, and that human beings have a negative impact on this warming, is consensus. So denier needs a little bit of context, and then you have to decide how much it matters to you, because you may have an EPA head who does qualify as a denier. Attorney General Pruitt has to speak more about this. Loyalty. How big a deal is this going to be in the Trump administration? We keep hearing it's big, but if Rudy Giuliani doesn't get a cabinet position and doesn't come out and say he didn't want one, so it was about what Rudy Giuliani's choice was, well then, is loyalty just something that they talk about, or is it really that important? Now, this isn't a criticism. I'm not saying that Rudy Giuliani is necessarily the best choice, but he's a pretty qualified guy, absent any considerations that are negative on this analysis that we don't know about. So it's an interesting look to see, does Trump value loyalty the way his guys say he does, or is he being more pragmatic and trying to do what will make him most popular / effective / popular again, because that may be his main metric for success as president. We'll see. Okay, your questions. Ready? La la la. Bienvenida Gardinet. What's going on with vote recounts? Why is 1219 important for the future of the presidency? If we're talking about the Electoral College, that's when there is the actual direct election of picking the President of the United States. Our election is actually an indirect election. What you do when you vote is you vote for the electors from the particular state that you vote in, and then they go and do the direct choice of president. Now, there is some controversy around whether or not those electors can vote what they want to do versus what their vote decided through its popular vote. A lot of this is decided state by state, and the idea of a faithless elector is somewhat remote, and there is no expectation that it changes the outcome of the election. Could it? Maybe. Will it? Probably not. The recounts seem to go, they seem to wind up being a stalled effort. There is room for criticism about what's motivating Jill Stein, whether or not she really has standing to push these kinds of issues, unless they're automatic recount laws that can be triggered by anybody's suggestion. But it doesn't seem that they're going to change the outcome of the election. Okay, Nikki Brown and Rosanna Rainieri. How are you feeling, Chris? I'm doing fine. You get sick a lot in this job. Tough hours. You don't get a lot of sleep. You meet a lot of people. You travel a lot. There's a lot of stress. So that all factors. And I got young kids. You're going to get sick a lot. And I don't think I have a great immune system. I've actually had it tested. And even though I'm, stronger than the average man, it turns out that I don't have a great immune system. I think I'm a little susceptible. I've tried to build it up. Don't send me your remedies. Thank you, but I try a lot of things. I don't know what works and what doesn't, but I'm fine. Thank you for asking. David Diaz, how can we as citizens initiate a grassroots movement to eliminate the Electoral College and elect a chief executive via popular vote? Now, that's the way most countries do it. I think the key to this question is grassroots movement. I think you need either laws in all of the states that they're going to dedicate all their electors to whomever won the popular vote in the nation overall versus their own tabulation within the state, or a constitutional amendment to make that happen. So you'd have to have grassroots that pressure all the people, in each state, making it happen in each state, or to have a constitutional amendment. Pretty remote. Fran Soren. Hi, Chris. How can the power of the presidency be curtailed so that any president in the future must give up all forms of active revenue? These are about laws, and the question goes on, but this person's pissed off that Trump wasn't as transparent. It's not a law that you have to give your taxes out. It's It's an ethical requirement. It's cultural things. This is what people have done. He chose not to. There are big problems with that. That's why all this conflict analysis keeps coming, because of the unknown. And there are real questions. You do have to know, especially with all of the political currency there was for going after Hillary Clinton with perceived conflicts of interest. You have perceived conflicts of interest now. And what are we going to do about them? We're going to wait, see what happens, and we're going to test them. Some of you may not like it, and it doesn't matter because that's what the job is. All right, last one. Kim Fitness. Can you do a video about what books you're reading, politics and non-politics? I read a ton. Right, like this weekend, I'm going to read Tim Murphy's new book that we had on the show today, Overcoming Passive Aggression. He wrote it with Lorianne Oberlin, who's another psychologist. You know, Congressman Tim Murphy from Pennsylvania is a 40-year clinician. He's still actively practicing psychology. I read all the time. I love self-exploration, self-help. I'm big into that. I also read a lot of biographies because they help me as a storyteller while also giving me some facts about people that I didn't know before. I don't do as much leisure reading as I used to because I'm reading articles and stuff for work all the time. But I'll tell you some good ones. Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist is one of my favorite books because I love the mix of the allegory and the religious implications mixed with the mystical implications and the idea of how you promote your own existence through what you project about yourself. If you go to places that are very hard hit or you meet people who are surviving extreme hardship very often, you'll be fascinated with how they seem to be positive in a situation that's so abjectly negative. A big part of that is you are what you project. You know, people who smile through their big battle with cancer, that, you know, there's either a butterfly effect or there is something that is healing to that dynamic of being positive even in a negative situation. So I read a lot. I'm going to be reading this one. Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist is a great one. A leisure reading, great story that just moves the spirit. MODOK, M-O-D-O-C, is a great book. It's about this kid and an elephant and an epic journey. Awesome. All right, so that's everything I got. I hope you have a great weekend.